Welcome to episode 9 of the Terminal to Triathlon podcast. I'm Mark Bryant. I created the Terminal to Triathlon project to help rewrite the script when it comes to healthcare, where functional and preventative medicine becomes the norm. My prognosis was considered terminal with 6 months to live from April 16 after I had a failed stem cell transplant. So in this episode, I'm joined by my sister and coach, Emma Huntley. There she is. Say hello.
Hi.
And also my good friend and fellow Ironman, Calum Stronach. Welcome to the show, you two.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, really good.
So, giving up our Sunday morning to share some of our biggest insights over the last couple of 12 months, isn't it? The project started. I can't remember when I booked it actually. When did you book the Ironman Ireland? And then I was a few weeks behind you.
I think it was literally January. I think it was a kind of a new year venture, and it was certainly around the early stage of the year, around December. It was either December or January this year.
Yeah. So we did the Rock in the September and then booked that, and then we had 8 months to prepare for it, right?
That's right.
So, sister coach, what's it been like coaching your brother?
It's been really good. I think there's so many different reasons. I think mainly from what people have said to me, it's been like, how are you coaching your brother? Like, it's so difficult to coach family. But I didn't really think about that too much. It was more, I guess there's like pros and cons. On the one side, I know you as my brother, which is a pro that I know you very well, but can also be a con because I know you as my brother. So it was like trying to keep that balance between you as an athlete and then you as my brother. And I've not been in that dynamic before where I've kind of been mentoring and coaching you. It's often the other way around. Yeah.
I think you said athlete, and I never saw myself as an athlete. And even when I did the Rock, I didn't see myself as an athlete. But when I guess you give yourself a big stretch goal, it's almost like I found the athlete in me. Like I was a good sportsman, and being a good sportsman means you can do quite well in most things. But then in order to complete my objective, which was to complete the Ironman and complete it well, it's almost like I had to become an athlete. Now, all these terminology that you both were using in terms of gradual adaptation, Mark, I can't believe you did an extra hour. You're not, you're silly. And, the nutritional side from Calum and just being, in his presence the day or two before and how he was focusing on the carb loading. I was just like, oh my goodness, there's so much to learn and so much credit to give to athletes that do this for a full-time job. There's so much in it, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I've written myself a few notes, and one of those things was like developing the athlete mindset and watching you shift from. I showed you some data from another one of my athletes, and they were all green, and they did really well in their events. And you were like, this is maybe 2 or 3 months in, and you were like, I want that. That's what I want to have. Like, I want green. And Training Peaks is what I'm talking about in the training software. And so that moment was like a switch in you to like, from just taking part in an Ironman to like, okay, I'm an athlete. And James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about that. And I'd written the quote down: with outcome-based habits, the focus is on what you want to achieve. Whereas with identity-based habits, the focus is on who you want to become. And I think that was massive in that process of becoming an Ironman, not just completing an Ironman event.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I was just listening to the podcast Calum and I did just to refresh my memory from before the Rock. And it was so funny because Calum's journey is completely different to mine. Yeah. And we both completed the Ironman. So Calum's reasons for doing this were different to mine. And what he said in that podcast was, if it's not on the program, I'm not doing it, because we were talking about doing swimming on the Thursday, but the programming was on the Wednesday. And you were like, if I've got something on a program, I stick to it. Whereas I'll let you explain how you approached your training for this, which still got you to the finish line. And yeah, so share that, Cal.
It was the opposite, in the sense of, particularly coming from a background of high level sport and a lot of certainly physical challenge being embodied in a lot of my past, doing kind of a number of different like 24-hour events, and then particularly, I suppose, certainly holding on to, like, I make the choice to hold on to the idea of physical capabilities within my, I suppose, the elements of my identity, whether that's my strength and I can back squat X amount, or whether that's the 24 hours of burpees that I did previously. And yeah, a big part of this has been kind of like almost stepping away from that, and disassociating myself with the kind of, I suppose, with the athlete, to be like, okay, well, that's always going to be there, but then can I learn to say no? And one of the things that even just came up, particularly throughout the training process of it, was just like, how much am I enjoying this? Like, how much of this is taking away from the things that I have learned to enjoy, particularly over the past couple of years? Because, as you know, it takes time. It takes also that emotional investment of, right, okay, I've got to, particularly the bike, right? I've got to make sure my bike's prepped. I've got to make sure, what route am I going on? Have I got everything that I need? Have I got my contingency if my bike fails me, et cetera, And so all of these kind of things, while balancing relationships and work and et cetera, has been, was a lot. And so that kind of idea of understanding that, okay, we have that comfort zone, and then we have that part of ourselves which seeks to be outside of our comfort zone. But then even within that, once you get beyond outside of your comfort zone, there is a place where it just becomes misery, and it just becomes suffering. And one of the things that I suppose this process that I've learned is that I'm very good at suffering, and I don't need to be. Like, and it's almost then stepping into, out of that kind of like the shadowland, so to speak, and then stepping back into, okay, well, what is the comfort zone and what is out of my comfort zone? And can I start to find that balance and take away that kind of expectation? So it's almost been, like I say, it's been learning to choose not to suffer and grind and hustle and all of these kind of terminologies, and stepping into what is more. There was a lot of angst, particularly towards in the last 2 weeks before the Ironman, but particularly the training side of it. Like, I feel good. Like, I ran 10K PBs. Like, the swim part of the Ironman was just incredibly validating. Like, I did it far quicker than what I expected to, and when I looked at my watch, I was like, no way. And then even the bike was just like a celebration of just a very general training structure that I'd followed, and nothing specific, but yet I think I overtook 500 people on the bike, like literally 480 something people on the bike. And I was like, and that was just for me, I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then the run was its own kind of story, but it all kind of came to a head in a really, really nice way.
Amazing. So it's funny. What time is it now? It's 9:39. So we would have been going for 3.5 hours by now. And then our next door neighbor said that he'd been camping, and by lunchtime he'd just put the tent up, and he looked and he was like, yeah, he was hot, he was sweaty, he was tired. He sat down and, I don't know, probably had a beer, and he was like, oh my God, Mark's been going since 6:30 and he's not going to finish till 7 o'clock. And when that kind of brought the awareness of the magnitude of what we actually did, like that 14 and a half hours of effort, which is insane. Yeah. And we're not a third of the way there now. So during the event, we'll step back to some of the training stuff. So in a minute, but I wrote down some notes that came through at different parts. It was like trust the process. And that was a big one for Coach M, because I'm the type of person that wants to challenge the process. I've always been one to go against the grain in many ways. And so I had to really learn that within me, is trusting the process. The other one was on the rock. There was a lot of me versus me. And in this one, there was a lot of me versus others. I compared myself to other people. And so it was just bringing the awareness to like, when is competitive energy healthy and useful, and when is my energy focusing on me useful? So my motto in this was just me versus me, the whole thing. And because I'd diligently followed the plan to a point, sort of 80-90% of the plan, maybe 90% of the plan, I was on the bike going, this is as much about strength as it is strategy, because I'm not finding this particularly difficult in the moment. Once I got myself to the start line, my hellhole was the night before the start. Getting to the start line in that first swim out, once I got to that first corner, I was okay on the way back, because for some reason I'd had almost like a mini panic attack, and that energy didn't dissipate until I was on that first corner, and that I managed to release that energy. When I was on the bike and I was dropping into drop, and you've got your head, and if you drop your head just a little bit more, it makes such a difference. And I was like, collect the easy points. It was like a computer game. And I was like, collect the easy points, like sailing through the wind. Christian, who's our next door neighbor's son, he shared a voice note that one of his friends that's done loads of Ironman, he shared it with me before the rock. And it was just like, fuel the engine. So while I was thinking, I just had a job to do, which was to keep the engine full. I didn't think I sweated
all the way. I was walking through the streets waiting for you, going, please eat, please fuel.
And I didn't until I got the photos. Have you seen your photos yet, Cal?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. The photos, yeah. So I couldn't believe how much salt I had on, because I'd obviously had it hosed off at some point, but I had like caked in salt on that second loop. And then steady as the new fast were some of my biggest insights. What came up for you in terms of useful lessons that you can channel into your future training and future endeavors?
My kind of ideas was in the swim was a very, very similar one. I was thinking smooth is fast and fast is smooth, and that was it. And that's essentially all I kind of thought of the whole time, as well as also trying to just be really present. That was a big thing, particularly for the swim. We've spoken about how once you turn, there was an orange buoy marker about the mile point of the swim, where you essentially turned back on yourself and then swam 2.3k back to the transition area. And it's at that point you then swam into the sun, and my God, it was amazing. Like we were just completely blessed with a completely still ocean, and even just like I don't know if you came across
jellyfish.
Well, I saw one jellyfish and he swam right across my face. And even like we'd been swimming the day before, and I'd taken a couple of stingers to the face on that occasion. But then even in that, I found when we were swimming, I found myself quite tight of being really worried about the jellyfish. Whereas it was almost like I was able to see the beauty in the jellyfish. In that
when
moment.
They're not stinging you.
Yeah, when they're not stinging me. And then like presence was a big one. And it's funny because when I was on the bike, I don't really feel as if I was that present in the sense of taking in the amazing loop that was there, but I was just so in my body the whole time that I wasn't really thinking. I was either connecting with other people, and I don't know how it was for you, but particularly the last 40k, there was where as you cycle people, it seemed a bit like a morgue. Like it was just quiet, and everyone was just like, oh my God. But other than kind of connecting with a few people and having some really good conversations, there was an Irish guy called Vincent that I spoke to and rode with for a bit through Middleton, and that was really cool.
Sounds like you're on a Sunday stroll.
It was
Middleton.
either really social or I was just really just in my body. And so there wasn't a lot of thinking that came up. And that was part of the really enjoyable part of it. And the worst thing that I had to navigate was the feet. The feet were sore from the vibrations of the pedal, but also a bit of back ache. But like even with that, it never got to a point where it felt really hard. Other than Windmill Hill, but that was more. We spoke last weekend about kind of like almost like a sensory overload, and there was a lot that came up for me. Not going up Windmill Hill necessarily, like it was hard. It's this 800-meter hill of 21% gradient. But it was almost just coming down off the back of it, just a kind of like a decompression, and particularly the first loop. And it depends how deep you want to go here. But I was almost in tears there. Like just there was so much that came up for me that like thought process wise, and that it just provoked within that. That it was just a kind of a complete decompression of that. So yeah, that was the main lessons were just of, like you say, smooth is fast is smooth, and just if you stay connected to, almost sounds a bit like woo-woo, but if you do stay connected to self throughout all of these things, and you actually just choose to listen. Like even I was in a real hole for about 45 minutes on that run, but I always chose to listen. And sometimes there was like a bit of disconnect between self and body, and what my body wanted to do and what my mind wanted to do. But I never stopped negotiating, and I never stopped listening. And I think that's what kind of got me through.
Was there, just on the event, not before or after? Well, after's great because you did it, but was there a point where you thought, I'm going to have to stop, I can't do this anymore?
No. There was a lot that worried me about an hour 20 into the run, particularly what was hard, because I did the first 10K or so in about 68 minutes, which for me I was really, really happy with. And I remember seeing Simon in the town and being like, I think I even said, like, I feel really, really strong. And then literally about 6 minutes later, I didn't feel strong. And I had this really salty taste in my mouth, which I knew was a problem. That I knew that's the beginning of something quite problematic. And so that kind of worried me. And then it almost like that kind of thing came up of like, or just of like, well, I've just lied to Simon, and I've just lied to myself, and am I kidding myself, and can I trust myself, and all of these kind of things. But it never felt like I was going to not finish, so to speak. I had some kind of real saving moments from other people, from the environment along the way, which really kind of helped me out.
That did make a big difference, is the people there. So from the sidelines, sitting there all day, from 3:30 in the morning when we left the house, or 4 o'clock, to the start line, and then having to be there. What was it like for you?
I think it was, this time round was almost easier than the rock. The rock I found more like worrying, that not even worrying, just like, how are they doing? How are they getting on? Whereas in this one, I was like, I just trust in the process. I trust you know what you're doing. I mean, we spent so long the day before, whenever we arrived in Ireland, like just nailing your nutrition and what you were going to do, and hour by hour, you know, sitting there with the both of you so that you knew exactly what you were doing and you had your plan. So I kind of just trusted that you both had your plan and that you were just going to run to that. So I found this time a little bit less like, than the rock. I found
stressful.
the rock. Yeah.
And what's it like coaching for somebody to go through an Ironman? Like, what does it take from a coaching and programming perspective when there's so much, I don't know, confusion out there in terms of what should be done, what shouldn't be done? How much time do you spend training versus, you know, minimal impact training? Like, what were the biggest insights you got from looking at the science and then programming for me?
The main thing for you all along was probably I was more protective, that I wanted to make sure that you weren't just doing too much too quickly, that just knowing your recovery rate and just monitoring that and making sure, like, I phoned you so much, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Just being like, oh God, I'm fine. And like getting you to believe in the mood swings or the energy dips, or it's not the training, it's everything else. No, it is everything. And just like gauging your recovery process and then building, like constantly week by week, adapting the week that we had planned. So I had the week and then I'd go in and change it all depending on like what you were doing. So constantly like meeting you where you were at rather than just applying the plan and just get it done. It was more like, where are you at? Where's your energy? Okay, it's dips a little bit. And being anemic, just, I know you know, that is a little bit of the puzzle that needs to be considered. So just constantly adapting as we went along. But coaching someone like you who has these qualities of like, don't take no for an answer, is amazing, because that's what I think got you to where you are today. Yeah. So not coaching that out of you, but embracing that. So whatever you were bringing to the table was like, okay, let me go and do my research and come back to you. So from that side of things was like, yeah, that was challenging for me, but also really exciting to watch you bring those qualities and to challenge me as a coach, which was really good. So yeah,
I think like it's almost I can't believe that we actually did it amidst because I don't spend much time looking back. You know, when I sat here and reflected, you know, having bone marrow biopsies, having results come in that weren't the best result I could have got, which is all clear. And then thinking, am I compromising my health as a result of doing this event, which a lot of people think you can do in terms of the cortisol load, the stress load on the body. Like Ironman professionals only do 1 or 2 events a year. And I was dumbfounded by that. I just thought these guys were doing, you know, like if you're a 100-meter runner, you do maybe 10 events in the year, but, you know, you're planning and you're very strategic about when you go for an event or an endurance endeavor of that magnitude, which they were some of my biggest insights. But then something, I was on a spiritual warrior workshop yesterday, and there's a part of you that has to die in order to grow. And it's, you know, I think Calum had some of that within him. He had to let go some of that old identity or reposition it to allow something new to come forward. And so I'm just trying to process that in me now, is like, what part of me has died to allow a better version of me to come out of this? You know, maybe the cancer story is a historic story, you know, and I can let that go, and I can now channel my energy a lot more into my future with my family, with my kids. I've been well for 5 years, you know, I've not taken any second line medication for 3-4 years. And it's almost like like that leap of faith, that leap of trust to believe in me, to believe in myself, because that's probably one of the biggest shifts in me, is that, you know, my self-belief is so much more now than it was before the event. So there's a huge psychological transition as a result of being able to stand here and wear this this medal, you know. So yeah, that's what came up for me in the last couple of days.
I think from the training though, there's two ways to look at it, the approach of it. It's almost like, I love the way Calum like embraced it, and as much as, and that touches like home to me when I trained for the Pentland Ultra, was like, I really want to enjoy the process. Like how I always approach everything of like, how can I enjoy this yet get the best result possible for me, and not think, how am I going to suffer so hard in this that I get the best result, rather than changing that narrative and just saying like, how can I enjoy this experience and not make it a slog. And that's that sweet spot of the training, to make sure that you are enjoying it, that you're not turning up fatigued all the time, that you're still, you know, bringing in variety when it was necessary, joining us in the gym, working out together, and then having a break from that mundane, because it can be quite long and lonely on that bike for a long time. So yeah, I think like there's two ways to look at it, and like, can you do these feats of endurance and enjoy them? And like Calum's saying, like just embodying the whole experience rather than just another just get it done thing. Just put your head down and get it done.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed the experience. I loved the last 3-4 weeks of training. I came together for me, like the nutrition. I felt like I became a cyclist. You know, the first time I went cycling with John, local coach and all around great chat, really. But I went out cycling with him, and he said, you look like almost like a beginner cyclist. Like I thought I was, you know, a relatively good cycler, but I had a long way to go. I think that discipline's the one thing you can make the biggest difference in. Do you think, Cal?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely. And I think that, just going back to what Emma said, it's the one key question that I ask myself, and particularly within my own kind of private work as well, is that kind of idea of like, well, what do I want to protect here? Like, this is the process, and there's got to be compromise, and there's got to be some degree of, I don't even want to call it sacrifice, but certainly got to be compromise. But within all of this, what am I looking to protect? And then once I identified those couple of things, then it just became a lot easier to negotiate. And then going then into the bike, which you're right, I think that's the discipline where you can make up the most, like to see what some other people were kind of able to produce on that, who are I'm sure we'd never know anyone's training history, but there were people who were like this Irish guy that I cycled with for a bit, like it was absolutely flying. And it just shows that some small tweaks, some small like application over time, and that's nothing special. It's just application over time. And it just makes a huge difference, and that's what all it came down to, was just time in the legs. And so if you're going to produce time in the legs, then it requires you to show up consistently, and therefore the question then is like, what do you need to show up consistently?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so should we so some of the tactical stuff. So if anybody's thinking that you would like to do an endurance event and you're thinking, you know, what are the biggest challenges? I've had a few people message me and say, how did you overcome the initial fear? I think there was quite a few people that didn't start. And it, you know, if they haven't practiced, like swimming in open water, swimming in open sea, you know, some people may have a fear of that. I know, even though Em's been a diving instructor, that's one of the things you would need to work on in terms of getting back in the water and feeling comfortable at depth, because you couldn't see the bottom. So practicing that, because if somebody's like, I heard some people that have got to start line who'd never swam in the sea before, and they'd only swam in the pool. And I'm like, wow, okay. You know, like we did most elements in that regard. So it's just training in the environment that you're going to be doing the event in. I think it's a useful thing.
Like rehearsing. You have to rehearse it until it becomes this natural.
Yeah.
You knew what to do. You knew your wetsuits, you knew your goggles, you trusted in all of those things.
Yeah.
You even tried it out the day before. It was like so rehearsed that by the time you came to doing it, you didn't have to think. It's like driving, isn't it?
Yeah. Like Dom Fink's book was good, useful for me in terms of there's 3 different programs in there, beginners, but they talk about the whole process. That helped me understand what Emma was giving me, like, and I could then validate in my own mind to go, okay, that makes sense. Gradual adaptation was something that I didn't really understand until I actually had done it on the bike. Like, it didn't make sense. It's like, particularly to do with some of those intense sessions where you just added a minute, like at each section, just to get the body used to going at that intensity over a period of time. Or instead of going out and saying, right, I'm going to go and I've never done 4 hours, I'll go and do 4 hours, is like build up to 4 hours over time. So I didn't really appreciate that gradual adaptation. And as you said, where you get that tiredness, where you just like, you just hit a phase of tiredness and you think, why am I so tired? Is probably because I overdid it, or I went too far and I went off program.
Or plus there's like functional overreaching, where you want to just get to that point and then you back off. So it's all very strategic in that.
The other one, so gradual adaptation, like kind of, I've got a lot better appreciation for that now as an athlete. The other one was carb loading. Oh my goodness me. So Calum was on it when it came to carb loading. How many grams of carbs did we eat? $10 grams per body weight.
Well, we're aiming. Yeah, 10 grams of 10 grams of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight. Certainly, the idea was to be between 8 and 10 would be ideal. But it was more so just doing what you can do, because if you've not done that before, or not had exposure to that, then it obviously, for every 1 gram of carbohydrate that we store within our body, then it brings around 3 grams of water. So there is this kind of, even that is a consideration, this fine balance of, okay, well, I need to be adequately fueled for this, but then there is an implication to showing up essentially up to 1.2 kilos heavier the next day, in terms of particularly when you're having to navigate and negotiate a swim. So even just kind of beginning to like practice that, and it'd be interesting for you to do something similar again, and rather, like, I think there was a mindset for both of us just to, okay, this is going to be good for us and we just have to do it. It's completely necessary. But even within that, just kind of finding that balance of like, okay, well, how can we best attune this so that we don't feel, I felt actually okay on the Sunday morning. But essentially you're asking yourself to consume, well, even if you get the 800 grams of carbohydrate through pure carbohydrate alone, that's what, 3,200 calories plus all the fats and the protein. So in essence, like 5,000 calories the day before. And so, how can you consume that volume of calories whilst feeling as good and as light and as ready to go the next day? Like ready to dance. So I mean, that's what we're aiming for, 8 to 10 grams per kilo of body weight. But I think that's definitely something that to explore and practice in future events, and just in our own training,
I think you and I talked a little bit, Calum, as well, about like, what does that look like for people? Like, it's all fine saying like 8 grams to 10 grams, but then what does that actually look like? And actually writing it down so you know like what that actually conceptually looks like in food. You're very good at knowing exactly, this will give me that, this will give me that. But if you're new to this kind of long distance event and you've got then someone says, just take on 8 to 10 grams of carbs, it's like, doesn't seem like that much, 8 to 10 grams per kilo of body weight, but then when you actually put it out on a plate.
Yeah. I think that was one of my most uncomfortable. Go on, Cal.
No, I said I've just got the list up now, and when you're eating, like, I think on when you're eating like a pan, like cereal out of a pan as opposed to a bowl, it like that's the reality of the situation. And then eating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like there's half a loaf of bread there, there's a couple of Lucozades, there's a tin of rice pudding, there's almost 250 grams of oats, there's sweet potato there was rice, and I drizzled honey over my rice to get there. There's crisps in there, Cliff Bar, plums and jam, and all of these kind of things. Like I'm actually really happy with the way that we achieved it. But if I was to just show the list that I've still got saved, like you'd be like, oh wow, okay, that's absolutely mental. And then you've got not only that, you have to then give yourself time to digest that and utilize that and partition it right through the day. So yeah.
And in my case, sweat through the night.
The thermic effect of food became
what was it, the night before when we ate a lot, and I said I feel really hot. He's like, oh, that's the first time Mark's had the thermic effect of food, having been relatively raw vegan, high nutrient, low calorie for 3-4 years. Amazing, thank you so much. From a coaching perspective, Emma, is there anything else you'd love to add here to help anybody that's listening to this?
Yeah, there was a reflection I had, like this isn't based on any, well, as far as I know, like any science or anything, but just being able to watch the front runners and then the people coming up, just the whole field, and turning to what I do now in High Rocks. And High Rocks is 8 kilometers of running, but it's very fatigued running. So all my training has to be trained as like running under fatigue. You have to do sled work and then you've got to run. And it just made me reflect on actually the whole structure of, say, Ironman, because this is what we're talking about. It's like Calum used a word of conserve, like conserve and conserve as much energy. And that really resonated, because when I was watching, you have to conserve energy on that swim. You have to conserve as much energy on the bike so that by the time you get off the bike, you can run a marathon. And I think that was like such a eye-opening thing for me. Like I don't know.
That was a golden nugget, to be honest. I think a lot of people at
the beginning train the swim and the bike when you're new and think the bike's such a big chunk that I just need to get really good at the bike and that's where I'm going to save my time. But you can be as good at the swim and the bike as you want to be, but you have to be able to run a marathon after what were you at, 7, 8 and a half hours of exercise already. Then you've got to run a marathon. That's a very different ballgame. And I think like running under that fatigue is, that's where you started to see a lot of wheels fall off. Whereas the front runner, the guy at the front, Chris Minton, watching him, his marathon was almost effortless. And it just made me think about High Rocks, which is a very different style of competition, but having to learn to run in fatigue, it's actually not that different from Ironman, really. I don't know what you think, Calum.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like that idea of conserving, like any prowess that I might have or feel I have as like bike being a strongest discipline just goes out the window, because reality is that kind of idea of showing how good is your weakest day on the bike. And that's really almost like where you need to show up, is that kind of idea of how slow but quickly can I go around this? What's the slowest I can go around this to kind of keep me in energy? And so it's almost, particularly now thinking back to even the first part of the year where I was really riding kind of drop position and thinking like, and hitting like speeds of say 35k an hour and be like, okay, I need to learn how to maintain this. I need to learn how to maintain this over a period of time. Whereas actually it should be the opposite. It's the sense of like, okay, what's the slowest I can go here that feels like it's really just ticking over, and how can I work with my slowest pace to then be able to, like, now whenever I get off a bike, I will just be like, okay, I want to be able to just stand up and just be like, oh, that was a nice ride, and not be like, oh my god. Because I can remember even recently doing it was about 100k loop over around the Ogwen Valley here in Snowdonia, and just coming back and just being like gassed, completely gassed. But I was like kind of like, excuse my language, but fuck yeah, like that was a great effort, that was a great ride, and all of this kind of stuff. And whereas like now I'm like, no, that was a lesson. I didn't need to do that. I needed just to learn how to coast and to be conserve. And funnily enough, yeah, and conserve. And I learned, and I did do that. I implemented that in a way that I was really happy with. But I think if I was to actually get hung up on the kind of like the performance metrics of particularly the bike, then that's where I'd place my focus going into another middle or long distance triathlon.
Yeah. I think I saw a lot more surrender in you in this event than say the Rock, which, you know, you came off, the bike handles were pulled off, and just seeing you on the course as well, there was a really relaxed edge to it. I
think, well, it's listen, I've listened to the podcast that we did before the Rock before, and we spoke a lot about obviously just the emotional healing benefit of just endurance training in general. And we spoke a lot about the inner child work that I had done around that time. And that certainly just like, that certainly came up for me. And like one of the more like powerful, I suppose, kind of ideas that, it was just a kind of a pure exploration, like a day of kind of sitting in some of this emotional work that I'd done and brought a lot of things together. Like one of the things that came up for me as I went round up Windmill Hill, and then there was just like this decompression of like I say, quiet after people are screaming at you and all the rest of it. And then for me, like having and really kind of confronting ideas of, I suppose, inadequacy and all of these kind of things was just like, I literally remember saying to Matt, is that not enough? Like, when is enough? Like, look at what I've like just done there. Like, I overtook a number of people on the hill. Like, I get like my lungs, like particularly on the first one, I didn't just go up it, I went up it hard. And the second time I just tried to survive up it. But then having all of these kind of things was really, really confronting. And that was part of the kind of like the emotional experience of it. It was like, well, what is enough here? And then seeing you on the run and kind of then being in that place of suffering where, like physically, where I have the headache, where I have a lot of warning signs to be like, I was overheating, I was having taking every ice pack that I could, like at times my vision was going blurry and all of this kind of stuff. And then this guy, and I literally wrestled with it for about 45 minutes, and then this guy came along and just it's almost like a bit angelic in their presence, and he just came to me and was like, how are you getting on? And I was like, this is really shit. And I was like, I'm not in a good place here. And he was like, yeah. I was like, he was a great swimmer. His time on the swim was incredible. He was like, I just worked so hard on the bike so I could afford to walk the whole marathon. And I was just like, I just looked at my watch and I was like, I could literally walk the whole marathon. Like I could walk the rest of the way and do this. And this was after the moment where I'd just been through the town and everyone's screaming at you. And I had my head down and I was pushing and stick to the strategy. And it was just one of these moments where I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like you've just ignored this whole experience of what could be this whole experience. And then just like, take it in. Like, take it in. I remember going, take it in, motherfucker. Like, what? Like, just like relax, and just start to essentially. I wouldn't say take myself like, essentially, it's taking myself so seriously. Like, take myself. Stop, just enjoy it, and not that I was taking myself seriously in the relation to a race, but just your effort. Like, everything is just take it in.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear the darkness that you went to in that regard, because I'm sure it was a depth, it was a struggle. The biggest struggle was pre-race, and then at times the run, as in, oh my God, I'm tired, but there was no. That was more mind over matter, I think. It was just like, just carry on. Harry said, hi guys, amazing effort. I tracked both of you during the day and wondered, were you guys working together at any stage? Did it seem Marky was out of the swim first, then Calum overtook on the bike, and then vice versa? What happened there was, I got out the swim first and did the transition. How long was your first transition?
8 minutes.
About 9 minutes, 8 minutes.
Yeah, mine was about 10. And then Calum caught me on the second lap at about 100k, maybe a bit before 100k, and we just had a conversation. He asked if, do you mind me drafting behind you? And I was like, oh yes. I was like, because I wanted to know where you were, and I didn't know where you were. I was like, I thought you would have passed me way on the first lap on the bike. And so, when I came through the town, Simon all of a sudden came up on my right-hand side before Windmill Hill. I didn't have time to ask him. And then my mind was like, I'm not stopping on Windmill Hill. So I didn't even get a chance to speak to anybody to ask where you were, because I was like, up Windmill Hill. And then, I just had to like trust the process that you were somewhere behind me. And then all of a sudden you came up behind me, and then I had this light of energy come through me. I was like, Cal, like, you're here. I was like, wicked. I was so excited. And then we had a conversation, and then I was like, look, you just go, mate. You go and take advantage of your strongest discipline. In the fact he's got legs like tree trunks. And so we had a quick conversation, and we didn't manage to stop for lunch together, did we?
No.
And then and then I saw you on the first lap, and I thought you were going strong. Like, I didn't know. You said, I'm towards the end of lap 1 or something, and I just found you, and then I carried on. And then obviously you had the issues with your feet and your overheating and everything. And then I just slowly caught you. And then you said, just go, go, And so that was the context of our working together. But he definitely gave me energy when we crossed paths, definitely.
Yeah, it was really refreshing for me, because when I came to the bottom of Windmill Hill, I said to Simon, how far is Mark this way?
Yeah.
Because I'd calculated, I was like, okay, so this is where I think how far ahead you would be out of the swim. So based off my pace and based off of your pace, I thought it would take me 3 hours to catch you, which proved to be just a bit longer than that. And so, when Simon said, he said you were literally 2 minutes that way. And so that was really, for me, really refreshing in the sense of, not that I was necessarily going to catch you. It's just that familiar and safe energy that, like, particularly because a lot of it's done in such isolation, that it's just like, like, it's connection, right? And connection makes us feel good no matter what point of the race that was in. So yeah, it was like similar, that kind of like nice bright light. And then even on the lap, on the first lap of the run, where I saw you come in one way and we kind of just like high-fived or whatever, like to see you kind of like into your rhythm and into that, I was like, Mark settled now. And you can just see that
his nasal breathing.
Yeah, I could tell. And you could just and seeing, because you want, obviously I want to do well, but then I want, like, I have an emotional attachment to the idea of you doing well too. So to see that kind of like take place, and to see you, and then even later on in the run, once you'd passed and kind of been on, to see the consistency that you were just implementing was like almost like spurring on for me in a really, really positive way.
Yeah, I was it's the first time I've ever run 42k off the bat, you know, like that. You had never done that distance before, so I didn't really know what the back 20 was going to look like.
That was the biggest worry for me, I think, as a coach. I think when going back to the coaching, because we had to back off the running for a time, about 2 or 3 months ago. So that was almost like just hoping. Your strategy of walk, run, 9 minute one, that was really good.
Yeah, and it worked. So strategy, strength, mental, mindset, all important elements to achieving your impossible. And I couldn't have done it with a better team, like Emma, Simon, Richie and Finley. We're all there, and on every lap, you know, cheering us on. And the whole crowd there was insane, and people in their gardens all day clapping, playing drums. It was just electric, the whole event. And I can't thank Ironman and the whole event organizing team for the event that they put on. It was so well organized. It was so well drilled to have that many participants in a small little town, fully closed roads, so we could just enjoy the riding. Was absolutely insane. So a wicked event. Question is, what's next? That's an interesting one. And so for me, it's going to be the half marathon in Conway in November. So start training for that next week, which is going to be exciting. And Emma will be programming. So if anybody is looking to achieve their impossible fitness goal, endurance goal, I can't recommend endurance training enough. You know, it definitely helped me with my mindset to be more structured, to be more disciplined, and carved out new ways of being for myself to show up in other areas of my life, in terms of business, in terms of work, in terms of family. So it really has helped me become a better man. And I look forward to one of our next endeavors, which is going to be hopefully in June next year. Calum, how's that is sitting with you at the moment?
Yeah, really exciting. Like,
okay,
completely. Just the idea of facilitating something that feels so congruent to, I suppose, two parts, me, and then also to just the Terminal Triathlon project itself, in coming together of triathlon-based practices, adventure, and just general experience. And so so
that's what Coach will be working on after November. Is we're putting together a 3 Peaks triathlon, because one of my, on the vision board in my hospital room, was 3 Peaks, the Tour de France for some reason, I'm not even sure why, and the Ironman. And so we're going to tick off the list the 3 Peaks. And so not just to go and do the 3 Peaks, but we're going to do it as a triathlon. So we're going to go up to Scotland, swim in a lake or a canal, 3.8k up and down the mountain, cycle part way towards Scarfell Pike, to Carlisle. And then we're going to create that same rhythm. So swim 3.8k up and down the mountain, and then break the cycle up. And we're going to do it over 5 days. Is that right?
That's the plan.
So that's going to be towards the end of June. So that's the next big event that we're organizing and channeling our energies towards. So over and out from Terminal Triathlon team. Em, have you got one last thing you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
No,
it's just great. It's just a great experience from beginning to on both
end.
sides with Cal and with you. So it's just been amazing.
So if you want to keep updated with our podcast, head over to terminaltriathlon.com, see how you can get involved and support the mission. And have a wonderful day, whatever you're doing. Over and out from Team Terminal Triathlon. Thanks, Cal and Em.
Bye.